Hello, and welcome to the Radiant Mission Podcast. My name is Rebecca Toomey, and today we have a very special guest with us, and I'll introduce her in a moment. But first, just to share, we are on a mission to encourage and inspire you as you're navigating through this life and with your relationship with Christ. So, as I mentioned, our special guest is here to talk about God's design for birth. And her name is Chyna Green, and she is a wife, a mama of two, a natural birth advocate, and she is passionate about informed consent and really trusting God's design for our bodies. Her first birth was an unmedicated water birth at a birth center, and her second birth was an unmedicated and unassisted home birth. You guys know I love that. So her main goal is to help other mamas to easily access the things that she spent so much time researching and looking into. And she's here today to encourage other moms to be. So if you are a mom to be now, or you plan to be, if you know someone who is, or you're passionate about learning about God's design for our bodies, keep listening and be sure to share this with a friend. And if you'd like to learn more about Chyna and follow along her journey, be sure to check out Instagram at, and I'll just spell out her name, CHYNA.CHRISTINE. And her website is msha.ke/Chyna Christine. So Chyna, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to sit down and chat with you. And I really love all the things that you and your sister are about. And your podcast has got to be just such a blessing to so many women. So I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. This is, of course, you probably know from everything that I post that birth is my favorite topic. Love talking about it. And I love your Instagram page. So I hope everybody goes to your page to check out your content because you really share great stuff on there. And I especially love your focus on God's design for birth because we often don't think about that at all when it comes to birth. We go into it and it's just like this thing. And many of us will go into the medical system and it's all about the medicalized birth and all that. And we don't think about how the Lord designed our bodies to be very wise and for everything to just work. So I love your passion for that. Take us through your journey and what you've learned about birth.
Yeah, so oh man, I don't even know where to start. I have done a complete 180, maybe even 360. Like I've just completely turned around from what I used to think about birth. If I could take you just way back a little bit for when I was like a young girl. My very first experience was with my mom, of course, when she was giving birth to my brother.
Okay.
And
how old were you?
I was 4.
Okay. And you remember it?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it was a little traumatic for me. She had unmedicated births with both of us, hospital births. And I was not allowed to be in the room with her. And people told me that, you cannot be in there with her right now. You have to wait. And so I remember sitting outside of the delivery room door with my grandpa, and I could hear my mom giving birth to my brother. And I thought they were hurting her. I thought they were, I had no idea what was going on. I did not really understand birth. I didn't know what was happening. So that is my very first memory of birth. So that kind of set the pace for me, right? I thought that everyone, that was standard experience. Okay. And fast forward a little bit to my sister-in-law's birth, who I actually was in the delivery room with her. And she really didn't want an epidural. And she just had kind of a hard time through her contractions. She had minimal support, and those of us who were in the room with her didn't really know what to do. We weren't experienced in it. We, all we could do is tell her she was doing great and rub her back and, all these things. And so there was just no support there. She was being told what she should or shouldn't do by the staff and this, that, and the other. And so it just was an experience that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And I thought with those two experiences combined, I was like, whenever I do get pregnant and give birth, I'm getting an epidural as soon as possible. And I even at one point said, can you opt in for a C-section? Because I had, I was like, I
Yeah.
don't want to do this at all.
Yeah.
So that's how I went into birth, is with that mindset.
Interesting.
And yeah, so I totally knew nothing of the natural birth world and everything that, your body goes through. And so when I got pregnant with my first, um, that's the mindset I had. And when I was searching for, an OB, I didn't have medical insurance at the time. So I was searching for an OB as a cash patient. And a lot of them wanted a very, very hefty payment up front on your very first appointment. And that didn't even cover half of the care. And so it was a really discouraging experience for me because I'm like, well, what am I going to do? How are we going to afford this? And I was like frantically searching on Google every single day, trying to find somewhere that I could go that would uh, take us as a cash patient that we could actually afford. And I remember coming across this birth center. Mind
Mhm.
you, I have no idea what a birth center is. I didn't even know they existed. I just knew nothing of them.
Mm.
And I go to their website and it looks like this beautiful facility. They have an FAQ page that, talks you through. Yes, they accept cash payments. They do payment plans. They're very flexible. Their cash customers actually pay less than their insured customers do. And, just all these different things. And I was like, this sounds great. But from reading this, it looks like you can't get an epidural. And that was a really big block for me.
Okay.
And I told my husband about it. And I was like, the only thing is if I give birth there, I can't get an epidural. And that
Mhm.
scared me so much. And he was like, you have to do whatever you want to do, whatever you think is right. Like, we're going to go for it. And so really, I mean, we scheduled the tour, we sat down with the director, we went through, I asked a ton of questions. And I mean, just from that moment on, she like eased my mind of all of my concerns and worries. And I started my journey on natural birth and preparing myself, in that way for that event, through resources they gave to me, through tons of, different searches online, through reading books and connecting with women who have done it before me. Um, and yeah, when I actually went through, um, my first birth process, it was just a very transformative experience for me. And I don't know how much of that you want me to get into, but it was just the moment I gave birth, it just kind of clicked like, wait a second, this is amazing. First off, like, this is incredible. I cannot believe I just did that.
Mhm.
Second off, I want to do it again. Like, what? um,
I know
and
that
third,
feeling.
like, yeah, and like, every woman deserves to feel this way. Like, why are women not feeling this way after they give birth? And then that kind of led me down a whole nother path. So
Mhm.
it's definitely been a journey going from where I started to where I am now.
That's amazing. I love how you started off with one thing in your mind, one plan,
Mhm.
and then what is that? How does that saying go? We make plans and God laughs, or something like that.
Yes, yes,
That's probably
absolutely.
how you felt, or it's almost probably funny for you to even think back or look back at yourself. I know I often feel that way when I look back, even before birth stuff. It's like I don't even know that
Mhm.
person anymore. It's cool
Yes,
how
yeah,
we can change and grow and continue to learn even as adults and as
yes,
mothers. We really are born in a way when we're giving birth. We give birth, but then there's a new side of us that gets born too at that point.
absolutely.
So something that was interesting that you said was about after you gave birth and how good it made you feel.
Mhm.
And that's something that always stands out to me because I went through an experience of having a hospital birth with a C-section and was on all the medications, had an epidural, was on probably fentanyl, whatever they give you when they put
Mhm.
you on a painkillers to do the C-section, and you do not get that feeling. I'll tell you that.
Mhm.
You don't get the rush of oxytocin that you get in natural birth. And that's what's made me also so passionate about it, is going through that a second time and having a totally physiological birth at home, unassisted, and, your body, feeling your body go through all of the things that it's supposed to go through, opens up, and then the baby is born, and that rush, that flood of oxytocin and other hormones that just naturally occur in your body. I think you're right. It's something that a lot of women don't get to experience. And for some women, it may be because of interventions. Perhaps they have been on Pitocin or something else, or it's the setting. There is something to be said about where we give birth. Anybody who's read Ina May's Guide to Childbirth knows just how important it is. And she shares a lot of the history of how we got to where we are today with where we give birth. And I know that that's something that you have experience with too, because you had your first birth and it was in a birthing center. And then now tell us about your second birth and then having a baby at home. What were the differences? What were the similarities perhaps? Or what did you learn through that experience?
So my second, I don't think there was anything about my second that was like my first. Just in overall
Interesting.
experience,
Okay.
how my labor went.
Was it
I
faster or
Oh
slower?
yeah. So my first labor was about 18 hours from the time my water broke until my daughter was born. My second labor was just under 10 hours.
Okay.
6 of those hours I spent laying in bed trying to sleep. Like it was just very it was absolutely wild. Um I didn't have I worked with a midwife until 20 weeks, and things changed, and we can get into that if you want to. And we ultimately decided to go unassisted. We had to rely very heavily on God going through that. And so when the day came, I was, nursing my child, my first child, and started having contractions. And I had started having Braxton Hicks contractions pretty early on. And I think that's just because I was nursing her, right? So around 20 weeks is when I started having them pretty regularly. So I thought that's all they were. And anyways, labor progresses. We have no idea how far into labor I actually am. And the baby is born like unexpectedly. Like we were just not, we were prepared to be here all day.
Yeah.
But it just, between the two experiences, my first, I was very internal. I didn't talk. I didn't want anybody to talk to me. A lot of times I didn't want to be touched. And it could have, some of it could be experience, right? But I think a lot of it too has to do with my environment. We drove like 45 minutes to the birth center. So driving in a car when you're in labor is not fun. It's really uncomfortable. You have all these other hormones released that are working against what your body is trying to do. I did have cervical checks done with my first, and those were incredibly uncomfortable. She tried to time them in between contractions, but sometimes while she was checking, I would get a contraction, and it was just extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I didn't move around much. I laid in the bed a lot. And when you're in active labor and having very strong contractions, that can be kind of uncomfortable to be stuck in bed and in one position. There was just a lot of different things that I did differently. So, this time I didn't have to go anywhere. I got to stay home. I didn't have to worry about packing a bag we didn't even pack like an emergency bag just in case. We're like, that's not happening.
Yeah. We don't need it.
I of course didn't have any cervical checks done, so I didn't need to worry about that. I stayed very active. I moved a lot. I got into positions that were going to help, work with gravity, work with my body. And it was just my husband and I. My daughter was here. She got picked up an hour before the baby was born, and I wish we would have just kept her here. I know we'll get into that, but
Yeah, we're going to get into that in next week's episode. Yeah.
and I it was just an incredible experience. I was not internal at all. I would, I'd get a contraction and I'd stop and I'd breathe and I'd count through it and move however I needed to. And then once that contraction was over, I was back. And my husband has a video of us just laughing about 20 minutes before the baby was born. And if you would have shown me that at like my first birth or right after my first birth, I would have been like, there's no way that that I could have had that experience, because although my first experience was amazing and transformative and I loved everything about it, it's incredible the difference, between more preparation, environment, trusting God, trusting your body, trusting the process, all of these different things. It's incredible how um, it can make such a difference.
Absolutely. Your environment is everything.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if you heard the episode we did with Dr. Stu a while back, but he gave a great analogy where he said, when a dog is in labor, it doesn't go to a busy street corner to give birth.
Exactly.
So why would we go to a busy hospital with bright lights and all these people rushing in and out of a room? And,
Mhm.
even in a birthing center, and this is not to speak down to birthing centers, it's just to point something out. You still have to, like you said, get in a car and drive there, which takes your mental focus away from what you're doing. And you're thinking, how long is this going to take?
Mhm.
I hope my husband doesn't crash this car. I wish he would go faster.
Mhm.
I remember that with my first two, that my water broke. I was having contractions. My water broke. And we got in the car to drive to the hospital. And I was having very intense contractions at that point. And we lived, at the time, the hospital was 25 minutes away, maybe. Felt like a lifetime.
Mhm.
And then as soon as I got into that hospital, I know that I reverse dilated because I did cervical checks then. They checked me. They were like, you're like a 1.5.
You're like, there's
Like,
no way.
what? And then, fast forward to I got the epidural, and like an hour and a half later, I was at a 9. So how is that possible, right? There are environmental situations. And I think this is one of the things that you and I probably want to point out about God's design for birth is he did provide us with an intuition for a reason as women. And when we're in the moment, our intuition will tell us to be insular, to, seek privacy, to seek a quiet space. And it's telling us that for a reason. It's because it's what our body needs in order to produce the hormones and relax in the state that
Mhm.
we need in order for our body to open up and give birth. And I think that's something that we probably just want to highlight to those listening that are, planning a birth is the most important thing that you can do is plan to give birth in a space where you're comfortable,
Mhm.
where you feel at peace, where the people around you are people you want to be around you. I was very much the same as you. I wanted it to be quiet. I didn't want people to be talking. I didn't want there to be a lot of noise or anything the second time. I actually had my headphones in, zoned out. And I was glad I did because I remember it was a small room for us. It was my husband and then my mom was there and our doula attended.
Mhm.
And I remember them laughing about something and thinking, now is not the time to be
Yeah.
laughing. But I was glad that I didn't hear what they were laughing about or what they were even talking about because I was focused.
Mhm.
And so I think that that's an important piece. It can make all the difference in how quickly or slowly we progress. I love, though, that you guys were joking around 20 minutes
Mhm.
before, because that's another thing that brings on oxytocin is laughter
Mhm.
and feeling loved. And everybody feels it in a different way, too.
Mhm.
For some people, it may be physical, but when you're in labor, sometimes that's the one thing you're like, don't touch me. I need to move around. I need to be quiet. I need to do what I need to do. So that's amazing. And you mentioned your daughter. We're going to talk about children and birth next time, because I think that this is an important topic to cover and for us to all consider as we're preparing for our babies is what do we want that to look like? So
Mhm.
anyhow, that's so awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. What would you say is your biggest lesson that you have learned from your two experiences? Or
Um,
even if it was something that came after as a result
yeah.
of.
Yeah, I first off, preparation, like you cannot prepare enough, and I don't think you can start early enough. I had with my first pregnancy, I started preparing after we found the birth center. Um,
And
because
now
I
let me stop you for a second.
yeah,
Specific kind of preparation: physical, mental, spiritual, all of the
all
above.
all of the above. Absolutely, yes, all of the
Not
above.
preparing the bassinet. We're talking
Right,
about
yes. Yes.
preparing the person, the mother.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So preparation through prayer and devotional and learning how to lean into God and trust the process in your body, and that He really designed us perfectly, and that He designed us with this process in mind. Preparing, through reading books like Ina May's books, or listening to podcasts, watching birth videos, just preparing your mind, preparing your body through various stretches, or, whatever it is that you're doing. Right. So I started that during my pregnancy when I found out I was having a natural birth. So it was an afterthought, honestly. And I think that how it is most of the time is an afterthought, or is it done at all? My mom told me that she had no idea what she was doing. She just got pregnant and she showed up at the hospital and she was in labor and she did and I think that's how it is for a lot of
Yeah,
women. Is there's
definitely.
no preparation. There's a lack of preparation because I don't know. I don't know why. I think, knowing what I know now, it seems so crazy to me. Like, why would you not prepare? Why would you not take those steps? But for some reason, there's a disconnection among the birthing world that preparation isn't necessary. So, anyways, um, yeah, preparation is huge. So after I gave birth, I just continued to learn. I continued to dive into the birthing world and learn more about the actual hormonal processes and just physiological birth. And, I just really nourished my mind surrounding that, and connected with other women surrounding their experiences. And by the time I became pregnant with my second, I felt for a moment, I don't need to do any other preparation, like I already know so much and I've already went through it before. But it turns out that there was some fears that I had, because we were originally working with a midwife, like I had said, and went from that to going unassisted. So there were some things that I had to work through, even though I knew that those situations that I was worried about were very minimal, right? So there was a lot of preparation that I had to do throughout that pregnancy as well, just fighting, facing fears and coming up with plans, and again leaning into God and all these different things. So yeah, I cannot stress enough on preparation. I think that if there's anything that anybody needs to do is just prepare themselves for that whole process.
Mm-hmm.
I have a good friend who is currently pregnant and was asking for suggestions surrounding what they need to get for a baby, right? And I said, honestly, like the bare minimum. And that, and I might be in the minority when it comes to that, but I'm like, the amount of things just from our experience that we have used compared to the amount of things that we've had is ridiculous. I said, if you can spend more time preparing your mind and your body for this, you're going to be way better off than
Yeah.
spending a ton of time and money preparing the nursery.
Yeah, definitely. I totally relate to that. I definitely spent a lot of time preparing the nursery the first time and not mentally preparing. We did do we moved during the end of my pregnancy with my first. And so we didn't go to anything in person, any in-person classes, but we watched a couple of YouTube videos on breathing techniques and stuff like that. But then when it came time, I literally panicked and I didn't know what to do. And so I very much was like you too. The second time that it was all about preparation, and I knew it was more than just physical preparation or even mental, it was spiritual too.
Mhm.
And just asking the Lord to guide me. What are you guiding me to do, Lord? And I had such a strong conviction from him that I needed to stay home, even through, like you, started with a midwife and then went without the midwife. And that was it was a hard moment to go through, but I knew it was the
Mhm.
Lord testing me in that
Yeah.
moment to say, are you going to listen to me? Because I've been telling you this whole time that you need to stay home.
Yeah.
And trusting him, I I feel is what led to such a positive and beautiful experience too, because I was living in his promise for me.
Mhm.
I was living
Mhm.
in what he had guided us to do. And so definitely want to encourage people, yes, prepare, especially spiritually, pray, ask the Lord for guidance and to really
Mhm.
guide you through your birth experience and
Mhm.
obviously for a healthy baby and pregnancy. And then mentally, I don't know if you did anything mental. I actually did the Hypno Babies program the second time,
Mhm.
which I know can be kind of controversial in the,
Mhm.
Christian community because of the name of it.
Right.
So I don't necessarily promote it, but for me personally, it helped me to reprogram how I thought about birth, being
Mhm.
that I had a C-section and was very medicalized up until that point. It did help me there. Now, they do have a Christian Hypno Babies app and tracks and stuff, but again, some folks feel very convicted against that type of stuff. And so,
Mhm.
go with the Lord, like, go with what he tells you to do. And if you feel that that's not the right thing, if that's what he's telling you, then don't do it. And if
Mhm.
otherwise, I just know it helped me a lot. So I don't know if there's anything else mental that you did to prepare.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I did a lot of the like hypno babies with my first.
Hmm.
And I think it's because I had such a shift with my plans that I really had to shift my mindset surrounding it. So
Hmm.
I listened, I'd be driving home from work, listening to different tracks and like I can do this. I am, my body is, and that's all it was. It was my
Yeah.
body is
Joyful
created for this.
affirmations.
My body, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd listen to breathing exercises and I downloaded the Christian hypnobirthing app because it has scripture on there and they have
Hmm.
tracks where you can play that's just scripture or they have those affirmations or whatever it is. So
Hmm.
that really helped me
Hmm.
a lot throughout my first. I didn't use it so much through my second, but if you don't care if I kind of dive into my personal experience with just like leaning
Yeah.
into God throughout my second.
Yeah.
So like I said, we worked with the midwife when I was 20 weeks. And so we moved states about a year and a half ago. And I had, right when we moved out here, I started researching midwives. And, because I knew I wanted a home birth and I knew that I wanted to be prepared. And I wasn't even pregnant yet. I was just like, I just want to be prepared for when the time comes. So I found one. And when I was pregnant, I reached out to her right away and we loved her. She was absolutely amazing. She really aligned with us and what we wanted and was very supportive. And I received an email when I was about 20 weeks pregnant saying that she was resigning and she was going into hospital midwifery. And
Ooh,
she,
that's a big shift.
I know. And so she gave us the option, I'd be more than happy to transfer you as a patient to the hospital with me. And I was like, thank you, but I just don't see myself giving birth there. That's not what I have, envisioned. So, no thanks. And she was also like, or I can put you in touch with other midwives in the area, or you can go unassisted. Like that was an option she presented to me, which I think is wild because I don't think there's many,
Yeah,
even midwives
most
that
midwives
say
don't
that.
even say that these days.
Yes, exactly. So I remember I had gotten the email and read it while we were on our way home from somewhere. And we had gotten home and we were sitting in the driveway of our house, my husband and I was like, what are we going to do? What am I going to do? I do not want to go to the hospital. I didn't click with the other midwives, and he's like, go unassisted. I was like, what? he's like, go unassisted. He's like, you know your stuff, you're prepared, you can absolutely do it. Like, we should do that. He's like, if you want to do something else, we can, but I think, you know, that we can do this. And I was like, okay.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, let me backtrack just a little bit. I had a doula, a very good friend who is also a doula who lives out of state, and she was going to travel a couple weeks before my, estimated due date and stay with us and then be present for our birth. And anyways, so I told her that. I said, how do you feel about me going unassisted? Because I didn't want her to be here and feel all kinds of pressure or feel uncomfortable or anything. And she was like, yeah, let's go for it. So anyways, we go on. I'm praying now at this point. I'm like, Lord, I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I know what I'm doing, but I don't know what I'm doing, And if this is not something that you want for us, if this is not something you have planned for us, please make it like painfully obvious. Just please redirect us, or, just really put it on our hearts that this is not what is meant for us. And a little fast forward a little bit, we find another doula to watch our daughter while she's here. She's also a friend, and we knew that we wanted our daughter here, but we also knew that we wanted someone else here to help care for her. And
Sure. Because she
so,
was little at this point too, right?
yes, she was 16 months
Yeah.
when our
Yeah.
second was born.
So it's not like she can
Um,
go, make herself
right.
Meals.
Right, exactly. Yeah. um, so she was on board with it. So we had two doulas, one for me, one for our first daughter. And everyone was good. So the first doula, my friend, something came up with her husband's business and she wasn't able to make it and come out. And that was really hard for me because I found so much comfort and support with her being there. And so again, it was just one of those conversations that I had with God, like, if this is if this is really something that we're supposed to do, like, will you tell me? Because now I'm not sure. And I told the other doula that she dropped out because I figured she would be uncomfortable with the fact that it was just her now, and she was very sweet. And she's like, I know you want me there for your daughter, but if you needed me or if something came up, I couldn't help myself from helping you, like she's like, I would have to step in just because that's who I am. And she's like, and I'm not comfortable in that situation. So just like that, we lost our midwife, my doula, and our childcare.
Oh no.
And we were about 30 minutes from going to church on a Sunday, and I just lost it. I just started crying. And I just remember hugging my husband, and I'm like, I don't know if this is what we're supposed to do. I don't, if this is what we were supposed to do, why would this be happening? I told him, I said, we've been praying that if this is what God had planned for us to show us. And I said, maybe he's showing us that this is not what we're supposed to do. And my husband said, or maybe he is. Maybe he's
Yeah.
saying that if this is what I'm getting goosebumps right now. He said, maybe it is. Maybe if this is what we want to do, then we're going to do it. Just us and him.
That's
And
great.
I was like, what? I didn't even consider that to be a possibility. And I trust my husband and his judgment. And I trust God, of course, in his judgment. And I said, okay, so we're gonna do this. And so from that moment forward, I prayed over my body, pregnant wise, my baby, the birth. And I said, Lord, like, this is yours. This pregnancy, I'm giving to you. I'm giving this baby to you. I am trusting you to lead us and guide us, and I know everything is going to go according to your plan. And it was a full surrender. Like, I have personally never surrendered in such a way. I mean, I didn't get any more testing done. I didn't get any more ultrasounds. I didn't do any blood work. I didn't do anything. It was just me, my body, my baby, and the Lord, and it was absolutely incredible. I mean, the amount of comfort and peace that I felt after affirming that it was his, and again, there were like little fears about what if this happens? What if this happens that I had to work through? And the day that I went into labor, my husband, we were sitting on the couch and he said, "How do you feel right now?" And I was like, "What do you mean? I'm in labor." Like, and he's like, "No, like, how do you feel? Are you nervous at all?" And I was like, "No." And he was like, "Me neither." Like, it was just a total calmness and a total peace that we felt. And it was just, I wish that was something that everyone felt. Like, it is absolutely incredible when you do trust in God's plan and design for birth and everything. And I couldn't say that, everything after just went as beautifully as you could hope for it. It was incredible.
That's awesome. What a beautiful testimony. And it's so cool. It was so cool when you said, my husband's like, yeah, maybe this is how it's exactly how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know, it was the Lord telling you, you don't need any of this. You don't need any
Mhm.
of these people. I've created you to do this, and you've got
Mhm.
me. I'm
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. That's so awesome. Well, I have one last question to ask you, and that is really what, after all of this, and of course, trusting the Lord and his guidance in birth, what is something that you would want all expecting or soon to be moms to know?
You 1000% are created to do this, right? And you don't need any of those interventions or any of those people or anything other than you, yourself, and God, truly. And that's really what I've learned through all this is that we are so incredibly created. I mean, when you sit down and you read all of the processes that our bodies go through, when it comes to pregnancy and birth, this triggers this, which triggers this, which triggers this. And even as much as I believe it was our body releases endorphins that are like 1,000 times stronger than morphine when we are going through like the natural physiological process. Like God thought of
Mhm.
that. And our body is incredible. We're made for this. That's what I want women to know is that
Good.
you have everything you need to give birth to your baby. Period.
Amen.
Yeah.
I give that an amen. Well, China, thank you so much for being on today and for sharing your testimony with us. This has been beautiful. And stay tuned, everybody, because she's going to be back next week. We're going to be talking about involving children in the birth process. And I think, we gave a little bit of that today, but next week we'll talk about that deeper. So if you've ever thought about how to involve your children in birth, we're going to dive into that. And you can find Chyna on Instagram at Chyna, CHYNA Christine, or on her website at msha.ke/Chyna Christine. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, everybody, for tuning in and for being on this journey. If you'd like to follow along outside the podcast, you can join the mission on Instagram and Facebook at The Radiant Mission, or you can watch this in YouTube format, of course, as well. And today we are going to close with a verse that Chyna shared with me that she loves because it's short, sweet, and simple and powerful at the same time. She mentioned that it's an amazing reminder any day, but she really leaned into God so heavily throughout her second pregnancy and birth and just really felt that full surrender and found so much comfort and peace and strength. And it just was a beautiful verse for her. So trusting the Lord helped her to feel more empowered. And that verse is Luke 1:37. For no word from God will ever fail. And we are wishing you a radiant week, and we'll see you next time.